Okay guys, in the last video I showed you how effective the grief prevention is, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use the grief prevention plugin to create and manage a town. So I'll get out my golden shovel here, and you can see underneath me that I've got the very beginnings of a fresh small town. So the first thing I want to do is protect this whole thing so that nobody else can come over and mess up my creation before I get everybody moved in. So I need to claim all this land. So I've got my shovel out, and then I'm going to right click way over here in the corner, and I'm going to run over to the opposite corner. Of course, to do this I have to have a whole lot of claim blocks available, and then say right click here, and you can see that I've claimed a rather large area. Looks like I need to make it a little bit bigger, make sure there's plenty of room for houses. So I'm going to drag this corner out further. There we go. So now I've got a really big claim area. Now usually when you create a town, you want to limit the individual building rights of the residents of your town. You don't want to give everybody full permission on the whole claim, because that would mean that they would be able to break into each other's houses and change blocks and open everybody else's chests and use buttons and levers and all that other stuff. So what you need to do is subdivide this claim up into smaller chunks where you can individually manage permissions. So the way I do that is I switch my golden shovel to subdivide claims mode by using the command /subdivide claims. Then I create subdivisions within this large claim, just in the same way that I would create claims in on a top level. So for example, if I want to create a subdivision over here where I want a house to go, I would start at this corner, then I come over to the other corner approximately where the house would go, and right click again. Now the subdivision shows up in silver so that you can tell the subdivision apart from the rest of the claim. So you've got gold for the top level claim, and then the subdivision shows up in silver. Now I don't really like the size of this plot that I've created, so I can resize it just as I could a top level claim by right clicking at the corner here, and then choosing a new place for that corner. So now the subdivision is big enough for a pretty big house. And I do that a few times, once in each spot where I want to have a house. And of course I would do that in the two other locations where I would want houses over there. And then to manage permissions in these subdivisions, I use the same commands that I would use for the top level claim, but I stand inside the subdivision that I want to edit. So if I stand inside the subdivision and use the trust command, then I can give another player build access to this subdivision only. So that would mean that that player would be able to build here within this silver outline subdivision, but he wouldn't be able to come over here and change the gravel path, and he wouldn't be able to come over here and change the other player's house. Further, because this house sort of belongs to that player, or at least that's my intention, I need to use another command called permission trust for that player. What that does is it allows that player to share the permission level that he's been given with other players in this subdivision. So that would allow him to invite his friends over and give them access to, say, the chests in his lot, or to allow them to open his doors, or even to allow them to help him build the house. Now, if it eventually comes to a point where I want to, say, evict this tenant, maybe we're running an economy plugin and I'm charging the guy 30 in-game currency to live here for a week, and he doesn't pay up for the next week, then I want to remove his permissions. But because I've given him permission trust, it's possible that he's also shared his permissions with lots of other players. So the best thing that there's another command I can use. You're probably familiar with the untrust command to untrust somebody. That removes permissions for one player. But if you type untrust space all, then that will remove permissions within this subdivision for all players. So that way I remove that guy's permission and also any permissions he gave to his friends. I could also use subdivisions as a temporary measure to limit access to a certain part of my claim for a short amount of time. Say, for example, some new guy that I've met has told me that he would like to create some big fancy fountain thing at the crossroads here. Now, it's possible, I don't really know this guy. It's possible he could be a griefer who's trying to trick me into giving him permissions in this claim. So what I can do is I can use my subdivision. I can create a subdivision here just around the area where the fountain would go. Then I would grant him access to this subdivision, and once he's done creating the fountain, then I can stand inside the subdivision and just type abandon claim while standing inside the subdivision, and that will remove just this subdivision. So now if I get my string out and refresh, you can see that all the top level claim and the other subdivisions are still intact, but this one's been wiped out. So then I've cleaned up that mess. Now here's another example of a small town. This one's a little bit different from the other town in that you see that there are some community builds available. There's a community farm, community workshop, and a community access point over here, these iron doors. And then the actual residences are rather small because they don't need space for farming and they don't need space for a lot of storage and crafting. So the residences themselves are small. They just have, the bed and the boxes for storing things. So if I fly up above the thing, you can see how I've marked it off. I've got the whole thing in one big claim, but then I've gone through the trouble of marking off the community areas and the individual residences as subdivisions. And the reason that this is a different scenario from the other situation is that these houses are pre-built. So when I want to move somebody in, I don't really want to give that resident complete control over this subdivision. I'd like to only give the resident an option to open the door and to access the boxes and the bed. And the way that I do that is I use a command called container trust, which grants access to both the buttons and switches and all the crafting tables and boxes in the subdivision or claim. And that way I don't have to worry about the tenant actually making changes to the build itself. Similarly, over here, I've got the community access point. I would like my residents to be able to open this door and get into the rest of the town, but I don't want to give them access privileges for the entire claim because that would mean they could also get into each other's houses. So I've blocked off this access area in its own subdivision, and here when I want to give a player access, I use a command called access trust, which only grants permission for the buttons and switches in this subdivision. So that way I can control access to the rest of the village, as in the community areas, without also affecting access to the individual residential units in the back. Again, over here for the workshop, I would use container trust to allow residents to open the boxes and to use the different crafting equipment here without giving them access to all the boxes in the whole claim. And also, over here you see that I've got the farm marked off. In order for somebody to harvest any of this farm and replant it later, they would have to have build trust. That's the highest level that I can give. And so it's very important that I mark this off so that if somebody say gets upset with me or decides that they want to wreck house, the worst that they can possibly do is break up this area right here around the farm rather than wrecking the entire town around me, see. So that's a pretty quick tutorial, I hope, of the grief prevention for creating towns and managing them. I hope you guys think it's really simple and easy and effective. The one challenge you might have is getting enough claim blocks to claim such a large area. You do, at least under the default configuration, remember that you do get some additional claim blocks just for playing on a server. Depending on the server's policies and server rules, there may be other ways that you can get claim blocks, like through economy integration, or maybe you could win a contest, or develop a cool build and then ask the administrators if they'll maybe reward you with some additional claim blocks so that you can get a town started. So have fun, guys, and good luck.